The night Bill Gates almost lost everything. The night was darker than usual. Not because the sky lacked stars, but because Bill Gates, for the first time in years, felt something he had almost forgotten: fear. It wasn't the kind of fear that comes from failure or loss of money. It was deeper, more personal, the fear of losing everything that truly mattered. He had spent the whole day in meetings, endless discussions, numbers, and decisions. His assistants had gone home, the office lights had dimmed, and the city outside hummed quietly under the night. But Bill remained there, alone, staring at his reflection in the glass wall of his office. It was past midnight. He should have been home hours ago. But home didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like just another place to rest before the next battle. The phone on his desk buzzed, again. A message from someone he hadn't spoken to in years. "Bill, I don't know if you'll ever read this. But you've changed. You used to care about people. Now it feels like you only care about numbers." He froze. The words hit him harder than any headline, any criticism, any business loss ever had. He knew who it was, someone who had once meant the world to him. Someone he had promised would never feel left behind. And yet, she had. He put the phone down, but the message stayed in his mind. He tried to drown it out with logic, with work, with statistics, but emotion doesn't follow reason. It was now 2 a.m. when he finally stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the glowing skyline. For years, those lights had represented progress, achievement, success. Tonight, they just looked hollow. He whispered, "What's the point of building everything if it costs you everyone?" He picked up his coat and left. No chauffeur, no assistant, just him. The city was quiet, and the air felt colder than usual. He drove aimlessly for a while, without destination, until he reached a narrow street he hadn't seen in years. He parked, stepped out, and stood still. Right in front of him was a small restaurant, dim lights, wooden chairs, old music playing inside. It looked exactly the same as it did 30 years ago. It was the first restaurant he had ever taken her to, the woman who used to remind him that life was more than deadlines. They'd shared late-night dinners here when he had no fame, no money. Just dreams. Without thinking, he walked inside. The waiter looked up, surprised. The world's richest man walking into a humble, old place like this at 3 in the morning. Bill simply smiled and said, "Is this table still open?" Pointing to the one by the window, their table. He sat down. The chair creaked softly beneath him. The smell of old wood and coffee filled the air. It was as if time had folded, bringing him back to the person he once was. He ordered black coffee, her favorite, and sat in silence. Every sound, the clinking cups, the faint jazz in the background, pulled memories from corners of his heart he thought were long gone. He remembered her laughter, her voice, the way she'd tell him to remembered how he used to laugh more, talk slower, dream simpler. But the night he lost her. It had been raining. He was supposed to ran late. Then another. Then another. By the time he arrived, the rain had stopped, and so had she. On the table, there was a note. Love shouldn't have to wait for success. That was the night she walked away. And that was the night he learned what success could cost. He had told himself for years that it was necessary, that sacrifices had to be made to build something great. But as he sat there decades later, with nothing but memories and the sound of the clock ticking, he realized, greatness means nothing when it makes you a stranger to your own heart. The waiter brought his coffee. Bill thanked him quietly. As he sipped it, he felt something strange, tears forming in his eyes. He couldn't remember the last time that had happened. At that moment, A young couple walked in, laughing, holding hands, talking about nothing and everything. They reminded him of his younger self before ambition became armor. He smiled softly. He wanted to tell them to hold on to each other, to not let success or stress steal their laughter. But he stayed silent. Some lessons are too heavy to teach, people must feel them themselves. He stayed there until dawn. As the first light broke over the city, he whispered to himself, maybe I've been chasing the wrong kind of success. He left the coffee unfinished, placed a few bills on the table, and walked out. The city was waking up, joggers, shopkeepers, early workers, all beginning another day. For them, he was still Bill Gates, the billionaire, the visionary. But that morning, he felt like someone else, someone lighter, someone human. He drove home slowly. When he arrived, the housekeeper was surprised to see him awake so early. He just smiled and said, I think I finally got some rest. He went to his study, sat by the window, and wrote something in his journal, a habit he had abandoned years ago. He wrote, the night I almost lost everything wasn't when my company struggled. It was the night I forgot why I started in the first place. Success without love, laughter, and peace isn't success, it's survival. He closed the journal and looked at the sunrise. He realized that life gives everyone two kinds of wealth, what you hold in your hands, and what you hold in your heart. And if you ever let one replace the other, that's when you truly lose everything. That day, he canceled all his meetings. Instead, he called his children. He made breakfast with them. He laughed more than he had in years. He even went for a walk, no security, no assistants, no agenda. Just him and the world he had been too busy to notice. People on the street recognized him, waved, took pictures. He smiled genuinely, not because of fame, but because he finally felt present. Later that evening, he sat by his lake again, the same place where many of his deepest reflections began. This time, there was no regret in his eyes, no exhaustion on his face. Only peace. He thought about that message, the one that had shaken him awake. He opened his phone again, read it once more, and smiled. Then he typed back, simply, you were right. I lost myself for a while. But I'm learning again, what really matters. He hit send, closed his phone, and watched the sky fade into twilight. In that quiet, something inside him healed. He finally understood. You don't lose everything when your business fails or your plans collapse. You lose everything when your heart goes silent. And that night, Bill Gates made a promise to himself, never to let silence replace the sound of laughter, never to let success outshine the beauty of simplicity. And never again to forget what really makes life worth living. Because true wealth isn't counted in dollars, it's measured in moments.